What's up, YouTube? It's the Country CEO back again with another video. Coming to you today, want to talk about the worst mistakes, the biggest mistakes rather, I made when I started in the dump truck business. The biggest mistakes I made when I started in the dump truck business. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, hit that like, leave a comment. We'll be glad to respond to you in a good time. Dump truck business, made some mistakes when I started, and I just want to share these things with you so you'll be able to know some things to look out for if you're thinking about getting into this business, which has been lucrative for me, able to make a living from it for over 20 years now. And so if I can help someone to avoid some mistakes that I made, then that'll be a good thing. The first biggest mistake I made was I bought a truck that wasn't totally spec'd out like it needed to be. The truck I bought was a road truck conversion, first of all, and it was an old Rider truck that I found in Houston, Texas. It used to be a road truck, had about 500,000-600,000 miles on it. Mileage wasn't bad. That wasn't the issue. The issue was that it was a road truck, and they converted it to a dump truck. Well, the problem with that was that I didn't know was that it wasn't double framed, which means that frame wasn't designed to carry weight. When you're a road truck, you're pulling weight, but when you're a dump truck, you're carrying weight. So it wasn't double frame in the frame of the truck. That was a problem. It had airbags, and dump trucks, most stout and stern dump trucks are of spring suspension. You don't need to have a dump truck that's an air ride. That's not going to last in the long run. So that truck had airbags on it, which gave me a lot of problems. Where other guys wouldn't get stuck, I would get stuck on top of the ground because the truck just wasn't sturdy enough to be able to handle the things that needed to be handled. All right. It had 22-inch tires. All right. I didn't have tall rubber, we call it, which was 24s, which allowed the truck to sit up higher and be a little bit more stouter. The spring suspension, with it being the air ride suspension and the springs in the front, I only had 2 leaf springs. Dump trucks typically have stacked springs, about 20,000-pound fronts, that allow that truck to sit up in the front. So when you put that load on there, and that truck comes down, it's not going to come down. When I got my first load on my truck, because I didn't have the right suspension, I mean, the fenders were almost rubbing the tires because the truck sat down in the front because it wasn't the proper springs on the front. So that put me into a bad situation. Also, I got a manual tarp, and it seems like an inconsequential thing, but when it gets cold or it's hot, and then you got to keep getting out and unrolling that tarp and rolling that tarp up, that gets to be a nuisance when you get into those kinds of situations. So I ended up with a manual. You want to get an automatic tarp. All right. And then also I had, because the truck wasn't spec'd out right, it had a road transmission, which was a 9-speed Eden Fuller, which was good for on the road. It had good top end speed, but it didn't have any pulling power. It wasn't a truck that was spec'd out to be able to pull in boggy ground, bad ground. All right, so again, a lot of times I got stuck when other guys wouldn't get stuck because I just didn't have the pulling power with that truck because it wasn't spec'd out to be an off-road truck. All right, so that was the real first mistake that I made, was in the truck that I bought. But thanks be to God, he made it work. I had to make some alterations by adding springs on the front, some other little alterations by protecting the airbags. Run across a guy that was going out of business. I bought the automatic tarp system. So over time, I was able to make it be a comfortable truck. All right, but then on, every truck that I bought from then on had the proper specs, but I didn't know. All right, and so make sure you get the properly spec'd out truck. Second mistake I made is that I don't think, as I look back on it, I had enough capital. After I put a down payment for the truck, I basically started with $5,000. I definitely wouldn't recommend that today to somebody. I think you probably need to have at least 10 getting started after you've done everything else, at least 10,000 to start. That calls for some real tense moments because, again, I had to make some alterations to the truck with those springs going in, spend a quick couple thousand doing that. And so, within a few weeks, I was in kind of almost a tight situation, but thank God the truck was working. So I had trucks that came, money rather, that came in behind it. All right. And so God was able to see us through that. All right, and so make sure you got enough capital because you know, it depends also in the season in which you're coming into the business, right? You don't want to come in the wintertime, you know, or when it's slow. You want to come in. I always thought a good time to come in was April or May, heading into the summer. It's typically a good time. You don't want to come in toward the winter, you know, because that's typically the slow time of year. All right, but if you do, you want to make sure that you got enough capital. All right, and then so that capital is going to help you with breakdowns, things of that nature, unforeseen situations that may pop up. If you're in business, that's going to happen, unforeseen things, right? So that second mistake I made, I just don't think, as I look back on it, I had enough capital. But again, God made it work and made it do what it do. But I wouldn't advise anybody to start like that if you know better. All right. The last thing, biggest mistake I made, I just don't think I did enough research. I thought I did. I talked with a couple of guys. I went on job sites and talked with some guys that I knew. All right. But just like anything, there are going to be things you don't know until you get in it. Right. But the previous things that I just mentioned to you, if I would have done a little bit more research and asked the right questions, then I would have knew that I needed more capital than I had. I would have knew what kind of truck to get, right, than what I got, right? So I think that I should have done a little bit more research on the kind of truck that I ended up with. I think I should have done some more research on the work. I talked to a couple of people, you know, but I did not do an exhaustive enough research on the work out there as I should have, right? All right, and then also the pros and the cons, all right? And so those are the three biggest mistakes that I made. I want to recap them for you. I bought the wrong kind of truck. It wasn't spec right. I didn't have enough capital, and I didn't do enough research. I hope this video has been helpful to you, to help you avoid the mistakes that I made. So when you step out there and become a trucker in the dump truck business, you can be successful and do great at it. This is the Country CEO bringing to you the game about the dump truck business. Share this video if it's been helpful to you. See you next time. Peace.